My name is Maren Clark. If you met me in the break room, you probably wouldn't remember me. I'm a software engineer, the kind who wears noise-canceling headphones for 8 hours a day and speaks only when spoken to. I was the quiet type. Too quiet, apparently. That silence is exactly why my manager thought he could get away with what he did. He mistook my quiet nature for weakness. He thought I was just a cog in the machine, someone who would roll over and accept whatever scraps were thrown my way. Right now, I am sitting in the third row of a velvet-lined auditorium, surrounded by the flashing lights of cameras and the murmur of industry leaders. The air conditioning is blasting, but my palms are sweating. On the stage, bathed in a golden spotlight, stands my former team. There is Cashin, the manager who made my life a nightmare, holding a crystal trophy above his head like he's a gladiator. Flanking him are Darian, Fallen, and Vesper, the core team who watched him dismantle my career and did nothing but smile. "I want to thank my incredible team," Cashin says into the microphone, his voice dripping with false humility. "We worked countless nights to build Sentinel AI. This is a victory for innovation." The crowd erupts into applause. I smile faintly. It's a tight, dangerous smile. My laptop is open on my lap, the screen dimmed so no one notices. My finger hovers over the enter key. They think the story ends with their victory speech. They are wrong. I whisper to myself, let's show them who really wrote it. I press the key. To understand why I'm about to blow up my own career on live television, we have to go back 6 months. That was when I started building GuardianNet. It wasn't just a job for me, it was personal. My uncle had been injured in a warehouse accident that could have been prevented by better sensor technology. I wanted to use AI to predict workplace hazards before they happened. I poured my soul into that code. I worked late nights, weekends, and holidays. I lived on vending machine coffee and stale bagels, driven by the belief that I was building something that would save lives. Cashin, my manager, didn't care about saving lives. He cared about his quarterly bonus. He was the type of boss who used buzzwords he didn't understand and took credit for ideas he couldn't spell. During our weekly check-ins, he would lean back in his expensive ergonomic chair and pick apart my work. "It's too complex, Maren," he would say, waving a hand dismissively. "The interface is clunky, it lacks pop." He never offered constructive feedback, just vague criticisms designed to make me feel small. I tried to defend the functionality, explaining the neural network architecture, but his eyes would glaze over. One evening, after I showed him a working prototype that predicted a forklift collision in a simulation, he sneered. "You're too junior to lead a project of this magnitude," he said, checking his watch. "I'll take it from here. We need a real vision." The next Monday morning, I walked into the office ready to present my updated timeline. Instead, I found my access card didn't work for the secure lab. I assumed it was a glitch. I went to my desk and tried to log into the main repository. Access denied. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I walked over to Cashin's glass-walled office. Darian, Fallen, and Vesper were already inside, laughing at something on the whiteboard. My diagrams. I knocked and entered. "Cashin, I can't access the GuardianNet files." Cashin didn't even look up from his tablet. "That's because we're restructuring the team, Maren. GuardianNet is now a priority initiative. I've assigned it to the core team to ensure we meet the deadline." "The core team?" I looked at Darian, who refused to meet my eyes. Fallen was busy pretending to write notes. Vesper offered a pitying smile that felt like a slap. "But I wrote the code base. I built the architecture." "It's streamlining," Cashin said, finally looking at me with dead, shark-like eyes. "You were getting bogged down in the weeds. Darian will lead the backend. Fallen is on UI. Vesper handles the data sets. You're off the project." I stood there, stunned. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. It was my code, my idea, and just like that, I was an outsider. I tried to fight it, of course. I sent emails. I requested meetings. But Cashin was a master of corporate maneuvering. He called me into a small, airless meeting room later that week. "You need to focus on documentation," he told me, sliding a stack of irrelevant manuals across the table. "Stay quiet and learn. If you cause a scene, it will reflect poorly on your performance review." Documentation. It was the workplace graveyard for ambitious developers. It was busy work designed to keep me silent and out of the way. For weeks, I sat at my desk, listening to the core team discuss my algorithms as if they had invented them. They treated me like I was invisible. If I walked into the break room, the conversation stopped. If I offered help, they ignored me. But they made a mistake. They didn't know I had habits they lacked. I was paranoid about data loss. Every night before the lockout, I had run a script that copied my local environment to a personal, encrypted drive. I had the original source code. One afternoon, I was browsing the shared company logs. Read-only access was all I had left, and I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the version history of the main file, my username had been scrubbed. The commit history now showed Darian as the original author of the core kernel. They weren't just taking over, they were erasing me. The final straw came in the form of an accidental email. Vesper was the team gossip, and she was careless with her reply all function. She forwarded a confidential slide deck to the entire department instead of just the management chain. She recalled it within 30 seconds, but that was 29 seconds too long. I had already opened it. The subject line read, Sentinel AI, Executive Board Pitch. I clicked through the slides, my heart pounding in my ears. It was my project. The screenshots were from my prototype. The data charts were the ones I had generated 3 weeks ago. But the name GuardianNet was gone, replaced by Sentinel AI. And on the title slide in bold letters, it listed the project leads: Cashin Vance, Darian Cole, Fallen Giles, Vesper Hahn. My name wasn't even in the footnotes. The presentation was scheduled for next week. Cashin was going to stand in front of the board of directors and sell my brain as his own. He was going to get the funding, the praise, and the promotion. I felt a wave of nausea. I wasn't just being pushed aside, I was being robbed in broad daylight. I saved the presentation to my secure drive. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. But I knew I couldn't win by shouting. I had to be smarter than them. I needed advice, so I went to see Thalia. She was a senior systems architect in a different department, a woman who had survived the tech industry for 30 years. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks away from the office, just in case anyone was watching. I showed her the presentation and the logs where my name had been deleted. Thalia took a long sip of her black coffee, her expression grim. This is theft, Marin, plain and simple. So I should go to the VP. I should storm into the boardroom, I asked, my voice shaking with rage. No, Thalia said sharply. If you do that, you look like a disgruntled employee. Cashin has the narrative control right now. He'll say you're jealous, that you weren't a team player. You have no hard proof that they didn't rewrite your code. But it's my code. I believe you, she said, softening. But corporate doesn't care about truth. They care about liability. Document everything. Don't let anger make you sloppy. If you strike, you have to make sure you don't miss. She leaned in closer. Do you still have any access at all? I have read access to the repo, and I still have my developer keys for the update server until Friday, I realized. Then use it, Thalia whispered. Don't delete anything, don't break anything, just sign your work. That night, I decided I wasn't going to destroy the project. I was going to hide a digital watermark inside it. A digital watermark in code isn't like a watermark on a photo. You can't just stamp it on top. It has to be woven into the logic of the program itself. I spent the next 3 nights awake, fueled by adrenaline and a cold, focused fury. I wrote a subroutine, a small packet of code that looked like a standard memory optimization script. To the untrained eye, or even a lazy developer like Darian, it would look like boring, functional housekeeping. But inside that script was a command. It was triggered by specific metadata variables. If the program ran for more than 1 hour on a public server, the watermark would engage. It wouldn't crash the system. Thalia was right. I couldn't be a vandal. Instead, it would simply inject a string of text into the system output logs. Source code authored by Marin Clark. Timestamp, original build 1. It was untraceable unless you knew exactly where to look in the millions of lines of code. It was my insurance policy. On Friday morning, 5 minutes before my developer keys were set to expire, I pushed a minor bug fix update to the server. Darian approved the merge without looking at it. He was too lazy to check my work. I watched the progress bar hit 100%. The watermark was inside. An hour later, my screen blinked. A notification popped up. Your permissions have been updated. I tried to click on the project folder. Access denied. They had locked me out completely. I looked over at the team area. Cashin was leaning over Darian's desk, pointing at the monitor. They were laughing. I opened the team chat, which I could still see, and saw a message from Cashin. Cashin finally cleaned up the repo, got rid of the dead weight. Great work, team. Next time, let's hope we get interns who bring better ideas. He knew I could see that. He was taunting me. He wanted me to snap. He wanted me to come over there and scream so he could call security and have me fired for being unstable. I took a deep breath. I stared at the screen. I pulled up the live demo link, the internal version running on the company server. It was my interface, my color scheme, my logic flow. But in the corner, under the About tab, it listed the Sentinel AI team. It hurt more than I expected. It felt like watching someone raise your child and teach them to hate you. But I didn't scream. I didn't type a furious reply. I simply closed the chat window and went back to my documentation. I made one last attempt to do things the right way. I scheduled a meeting with Callista in HR. Callista was known for her bright floral blouses and her complete lack of empathy. I sat in her pastel-colored office and laid out my evidence. I showed her the early drafts with my initials and the file names. I showed her the emails where I discussed the architecture months ago. Callista looked at the papers, then at me. She sighed, as if I were a toddler complaining about a stolen toy. "Marin, look," she said, clasping her hands. "Software development is a collaborative process. Company policy states that all work created here belongs to the company, not the individual. There is no proof you created it alone." "But they removed my name," I insisted. "They are claiming full credit for an award submission." "The manager decides how credit is distributed based on contribution," Callista said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Cashin feels your contribution was foundational, but not final. And frankly, Marin, coming here to complain about your teammates creates a hostile work environment." She was protecting him. Cashin and the department head played golf together. HR wasn't there to protect me. It was there to protect the company from liability. I realized then that the system was rigged. I stood up, gathered my papers, and walked out without another word. After the HR meeting, I changed my strategy. I went completely silent. I stopped asking for credit. I stopped complaining to colleagues. I became exactly what Cashin wanted, a piece of office furniture. But at home, I was working harder than ever. I took my original backups, the ones I had saved before the lockout, and I began to build a new version. I called it Guardian 1. I improved the algorithm. I made it faster, leaner, and more accurate than the bloated version Darian was surely messing up. I worked in the dark, the glow of my monitor the only light in my apartment. It was exhausting, but it kept me sane. It gave me a purpose. Then, 2 months later, I saw the news post on the company intranet. Sentinel AI, shortlisted for prestigious Tech Vision Award. My stomach dropped. The Tech Vision Award was huge. It came with a cash prize, industry recognition, and massive press coverage. The article featured a photo of Cashin, Darian, Fallen, and Vesper standing in front of the server racks, looking heroic. "We are honored," Cashin was quoted as saying. "Innovation is in our DNA." I stared at the photo. They were going to win an award for my work. The anger that had been simmering for months began to boil over. But this time, it wasn't hot, chaotic rage. It was cold. It was calculating. The humiliation wasn't over. A week later, Cashin called a department-wide meeting to celebrate the nomination. He made everyone gather in the main conference room. He didn't have to invite me, but he did. He wanted an audience. "I need you to take notes, Marin," he said as I walked in, "since you're good at documentation." I sat in the back corner, typing quietly as he presented his vision to the department. He used my metaphors. He used the specific use cases I had written on my whiteboard 6 months ago. The board members in the room nodded in approval. Alaric, the VP of Technology, stood up at the end. He was a good man, but he was disconnected from the day-to-day grind. He didn't know the truth. "Cashin," Alaric said, clapping him on the shoulder. "This is remarkable work. The board is discussing a promotion for you, Director of Innovation. You've earned it." Cashin beamed. "Thank you, Alaric. It's all about having the right team." He glanced at me for a split second. A smirk, a challenge. He was rubbing my nose in it. I kept typing, my face blank, Director of Innovation. He was going to fail upwards using my ladder. That Friday, there was a celebratory office party. Pizza, cheap wine, and forced socialization. I planned to skip it, but Thalia texted me, "Show your face. Don't look defeated." So I went. I stood by the soda machine, nursing a Diet Coke. Vesper stumbled over to me, a plastic cup of wine in her hand. She was tipsy. "Hey, Marin," she giggled. "Awkward, right?" "Not for me," I said evenly. "You know," she leaned in, her breath smelling of cheap Chardonnay. "Cashin said you should have been grateful just to be on the project at all. He said you didn't have the executive presence to sell it." She laughed, as if she were sharing a funny joke. "Executive presence," I repeated. "Yeah, but hey, at least you still have a job, right?" She patted my arm and wandered off. I watched her go. Grateful? They stole my intellectual property and told me to be grateful. I put my drink down. I didn't need their approval. I had the truth, and I had a secure drive at home that proved everything. I left the party early. It was time to stop documenting and start preparing the final blow. I spent the weekend compiling a report. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a forensic dossier. I had 40 pages of code comparisons, time-stamped logs, and the metadata from the original files showing my author tag. I included the email where Cashin admitted to cleaning the repo. I sent it to the company's dedicated ethics inbox. I used an anonymous routing service, so it couldn't be deleted from my sent folder. I waited. 1 week passed, 2 weeks. Silence. I checked the logs. The email had been opened. It had been read, but nothing happened. Cashin was still walking around like a king. Darian was still bragging about the award. I realized then that the ethics hotline was a black hole. They weren't going to investigate a rising star like Cashin Wright before he won a major industry award. It would be a PR disaster. They buried it. They chose the lie because the lie was profitable. If the company wouldn't listen to the truth, I had to make sure the world did. The announcement came on a Tuesday. Sentinel AI had won the regional round. Now it was being featured nationally. The final ceremony was to be held in the city's largest convention center, broadcast live on tech blogs and industry channels. Cashin's ego was out of control. He was giving interviews. He was on LinkedIn posting inspirational quotes about leadership and vision. Then I heard a ping in my inbox. Subject: Invitation, National Tech Vision Ceremony. I opened it. It was an automated invite. Because my name was technically still attached to the department roster, the system had auto-generated an invite for me. "Your team has been shortlisted for the grand prize." It was ironic. The algorithm knew I was part of the team, even if the humans didn't. I stared at the accept button. This was it. This was the stage. They wanted the spotlight. I would give them a spotlight they would never forget. The next day, Cashin stopped by my desk. He had seen the invite list. "I saw you accepted the invite to the ceremony," he said, leaning on my cubicle wall. His tone was casual, but his eyes were hard. "It's an open invite for the department," I said, not looking up from my screen. "Look, Marin," he lowered his voice. "You can come if you behave, but if you try to make this about you or cause a scene, security will handle it. This is a big night for the company. Don't ruin it." He was scared. Deep down, he knew he was a fraud, and he was terrified that I would expose him. But he thought I would do it by crying or making a scene in the lobby. He didn't understand how engineers fought. I looked him in the eye. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Cashin. I'll be there to cheer you on." He seemed satisfied with my submission. He patted my desk and walked away. "Good. Wear something nice. 2 nights before the ceremony, I sat at my home computer. I had remote access to the public demo that would be used at the ceremony. Cashin hadn't revoked my basic user privileges because he didn't think I could do anything with read-only access. But my watermark was already inside. I just needed to update the trigger. I wrote a patch for my hidden code. Instead of just printing a text line in the logs, I added a visual signature. I coded a script that would override the display layer. It was subtle, hidden in the background styling algorithms. I tested it on my local simulation. I typed the activation command. The screen flickered. The company logo dissolved, and in its place, bold white text scrolled across the black background. Developed by Marin Clark. It was perfect. It wasn't a virus. It didn't delete data. It simply corrected the attribution. I uploaded the patch to the server. Darian, as usual, had left the auto-update port open. He was so confident in his victory that he had stopped checking the locks. The night of the ceremony arrived. The ballroom was freezing, chilled to protect the massive LED screens and server racks on stage. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns filled the room. Waiters circulated with champagne. I wore a simple black dress. I sat in the back, away from the reserved tables where Cashin and the core team were clinking glasses. They looked triumphant. Vesper was laughing loudly. Darian was fixing his tie every 5 seconds. The lights dimmed. The host, a famous tech journalist, took the stage. "And now for the Innovation in Safety Award," she announced. "The winner is Sentinel AI from Vector Corp." The room exploded in applause. Music swelled. Cashin stood up, buttoning his jacket. He high-fived Darian. They walked up the stairs to the stage. I opened my laptop. I connected to the venue's public Wi-Fi. I tunneled into the demo server. Cashin took the microphone. "Thank you. This project represents teamwork and leadership. We dared to dream of a safer world." "Leadership," I whispered to myself. I typed the command sequence. Run, /usr/bin/watermark override. Target, live feed. I hesitated for 1 second. Once I did this, there was no going back. I would probably be fired. I might be blacklisted. But then I looked at Cashin's smug face on the giant screen. I thought about the late nights. I thought about my uncle. I thought about stay quiet and learn. I hit enter. On stage, Cashin was pointing to the giant screen behind him, where the Sentinel AI logo was spinning. "As you can see," he said, "our interface is seamless." The screen behind him flickered. A digital glitch line ran horizontally across the image. Cashin didn't notice at first. He kept talking. "We built this from the ground up." The audience noticed. A murmur went through the crowd. The spinning logo stopped. The blue background turned a stark, terminal black. Then the text began to scroll. It was massive. Green code cascading like a waterfall, resolving into clear white letters. Sentinel AI Copyright 2024. Original source code, DTCTD. Architect, MARENCLARKE. CONTRIBUTIONS by Cashin VANCE, 0%. CONTRIBUTIONS by DARIN Cole, 0%. The crowd gasped. It was a collective sound, like all the air leaving the room at once. Cashin turned around. He saw the screen. He froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The giant letters loomed over him, dwarfing him. Camera flashes went off like a strobe light. The master of ceremonies stepped forward, looking confused. "Cashin, who is Marin Clark?" Panic erupted backstage. I could see the tech crew scrambling, trying to cut the feed. But the watermark was embedded in the compiled application, not the projector feed. They couldn't turn it off without shutting down the entire system. Cashin was shouting now. "It's a hack, we're being hacked, cut the power." He looked desperate, sweating under the stage lights. I stood up slowly. I wasn't hiding anymore. People turned to look at me. I walked toward the judge's table near the front. I placed my laptop on their table. "It's not a hack," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to be heard over the murmurs. "It's a copyright signature, and I have the original timestamps to prove it. I opened my folder. I showed the lead judge, a stern-looking woman from a major software firm, my original prototypes. I showed her the notebook sketches from 6 months ago. "This is my work," I said. "They stole it." The judge looked at the screen, then at Cashin, who was currently yelling at a stagehand. She looked back at me. "We need an immediate review," she said into her headset. The ceremony was paused. The live feed cut to a commercial, but the damage was done. Twitter was already trending with Marin Clark and Sentinel fraud. We were ushered into a private room. Me, Cashin, Darian, the judges, and Alaric, the VP. "She planted a virus," Cashin screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She's trying to sabotage us." "It's not a virus," I said calmly. "It's a metadata tag. It only activates if the core kernel matches my original hash key. If you had written the code, Cashin, the tag wouldn't exist." The judges brought in a forensics expert. He plugged into the server. He mirrored the drive. "He's trying to delete emails," the expert noted, looking at a secondary monitor. "Someone is remotely trying to scrub the inbox of Cashin Vance right now." Cashin went pale. I did." "Stop," Alaric said. His voice was quiet, but it was terrifying. He looked at Cashin with pure disgust. "The logs show you removed Marin's name 5 months ago, and Darian just admitted it." I looked over. Darian was sitting in the corner, head in his hands. Fallen was crying. Vesper was staring at the floor. They had crumbled the moment the pressure hit. "It was Cashin's idea," Fallen whispered. "He told us Marin was being let go anyway." The fallout was swift and brutal. The next morning, security escorted Cashin and Darian out of the building. They weren't just fired, they were terminated for gross misconduct and ethics violations. Their careers in the industry were effectively over. No one hires a thief who gets caught on live TV. Vesper resigned before she could be fired. She sent me a long, rambling email apologizing, but I deleted it without reading it. I didn't need her apology. Alaric called an all-hands meeting. He stood on the same stage where Cashin had humiliated me. "We failed," Alaric said to the company. "We failed to protect our talent. We failed to listen. To Marin Clark, I offer my deepest public apology." The award committee reopened the voting. They disqualified Vector Corp initially, but after reviewing the evidence and seeing the overwhelming public support for me, they made an unprecedented decision. 3 weeks later, I received an email. Subject: TechVision Award recipient, official notification. Dear Ms. Clark, the committee has unanimously voted to award the prize for innovation in safety to the original architect of the project. I had won, not the team, me. I was invited to speak at a special reception. As I was preparing, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You ruined me. I hope it was worth it." It was Cashin. He was blaming me until the bitter end. I typed a reply, then deleted it. He wasn't worth the data. I blocked the number. I stood on the stage. The room was smaller than the big ceremony, but it was filled with people who actually mattered: engineers, developers, and safety advocates. The trophy felt heavy in my hands. It was cool and solid. I adjusted the microphone. I thought about the girl who sat in the back of the room, taking notes while men took credit for her mind. "I was told I was too quiet to lead," I said into the silence. "I was told to focus on documentation. Turns out, silence is powerful when you let your work speak for itself." There was a murmur of agreement from the crowd. "Code doesn't lie," I continued. "People lie, managers lie, but the logic always tells the truth. Integrity isn't optional in our line of work. It's the code we live by." The ovation was standing. It wasn't polite applause this time. It was real. I looked into the camera broadcasting the live feed. I hoped Cashin was watching. I didn't stay at Vector Corp. I couldn't, not after everything. But I didn't have to look for a job. The job offers came to me. 2 days after my speech, I received a call from a venture capital firm. They didn't want Sentinel AI. They wanted Guardian One, the better, faster version I had built in the dark of my apartment. They wanted to fund my own startup. I packed up my desk at the old office. I found the manual Cashin had told me to read. I left it on his empty desk. As I walked out of the building for the last time, into the bright afternoon sun, I felt lighter. They had stolen my project once. They had tried to erase my name. But in the end, they had only etched it in stone. I closed my laptop. My new office was waiting. And this time, the name on the door was mine.